Hello, everybody, and welcome to another new episode of the One Stump Shot podcast. I'm delighted to have Izzy Westbury with me once again. Hi, Izzy.
Hello.
This episode, we're going to talk about the England women's tour of the subcontinent, India and Sri Lanka. And I think the fact that they've won 10 in a row has rightfully been the headlines, but maybe it obscures a little bit of disappointment at the start of the tour, losing the ODI series 2-1 in India. They didn't have a lot of prep time, bowled out for 161 in the second ODI, 136 in the first when chasing a modest 203. Disappointment, bounced back in the third one. They chased down 208 to win, but kind of the damage was done really in the ODI series. You were out there with the BBC. How did you see that particular portion of the tour from England's point of view?
It was a really torrid start. The players were struggling on and off the pitch, and there were so many different factors. I think India just come back from beating New Zealand for the first time in a bilateral ODI series. India had also been playing a lot of cricket. England had been in winter nets, essentially. I think that they took a bit of time just to adjust to the Indian conditions as well. They'd only managed to play, I think, one warm-up match. They'd actually asked for more. BCCI had sort of not offered them anything else. So there are loads of contributing factors. And also, but I think one thing I highlighted and got a little bit of stick for, perhaps, I just felt that England women's team are a little bit mollycoddled at the moment. It's a lovely environment to be in, but it's almost too lovely. It's kind of like you want to have a nice time and enjoy the company of others and slip tea by the pool if you're on a nice holiday. But they're there to play professional cricket and kind of they're missing a little bit of an edge. They wrapped up on cotton wool a bit. They are happy to take instructions and do as they're told, but they're not. I haven't seen many of them making their own decisions, kind of becoming autonomous grown-up women, opposed to.
Are they a bit too well drilled? Is that?
Yeah. And I'm trying to. I've got no sort of empirical scientific evidence or anything. It's just kind of just observing them both. We were with the BBC. We were a very small team of three of us that were in the same hotels. We saw them a lot. And you get a good kind of idea of what their, the team rules and what they've been advised they can and can't do. And you kind of felt that wouldn't have been the same if it was an England men's team out there. And I think part of it is this whole transitioning from an amateur setup to a professional one, which is still a process. 2014 is not that long ago in the scheme of things that they became professionals. Yes, there are a few players that will have been essentially professionals their whole adult playing careers, but most of them will have started their sort of England careers as amateurs. Yeah. And I think there's this unrealistic expectation of the ideal that they're all trying to live up to all of the time. And actually that's A, unachievable, and B, it's exhausting. It's mentally extremely tiring to be the perfect professional the whole time. You need to be human and, I say let your hair down, but at least just have some to switch off and not have to be doing sort of, representing your country at all times. And I think the men know that because men's cricket has had a professional element to it for over a century. Whereas as a woman, it's like, I think any woman going into any professional sphere that is traditionally dominated by males, whether it's in the sports place or whether it's in a different professional work environment, say the city or law, for example, you're so intent on proving that you can do it that you lose that character, that individuality, and you just become this, or you're in danger of becoming kind of this automaton, this perfectionist automaton. And I think that we saw that in the cricket. Yeah. They were almost a little bit too scared to play the shots they wanted to try a few new things. And I think part of it is the sort of the coaching style of Mark Robinson. Mark Robinson is a really nice guy. So is Ali Maiden, and you're never going to see them. Their way of coaching is not to lose their cool, or they're definitely not kind of the hairdryer approach kind of coaches. Yeah. But sometimes you just want, say, a Heaven Knight or a Mark Robinson just to get a little bit angry. Yeah. Whereas he's a kind of there is a bit of a disappointed father element, I think, but equally I just think it's a too comfortable environment, and it will be very interesting to see the summer. I think Sri Lanka, obviously, it's a wonderful achievement. Don't get me wrong; the only thing they can do is play the opposition in front of them, and to get 10 wins on the trot away from home is incredible in any form of the game, men or women. But I do think Sri Lanka are a much lesser entity than India and England. I mean, if they didn't win all of their matches, you would have thought that's probably a disappointment. So I think that this summer will be very interesting. West Indies, they're not so strong in one-day cricket, but they are certainly a force to contend with in T20 cricket. And then, of course, we've got the Ashes. And I think that Australia at the moment, having been really had their nose put out of joint, I think, in that World Cup in 2017, they came in as favourites. It was an amazing display by India and Harmanpreet Kaur specifically that blasted them out of the tournament, and they really felt that should have been theirs to win.
Yeah.
And England, who certainly were not, I think on paper you would have put Australia on top of them. They kind of have restructured a little bit since then. I think they had a few issues off the pitch as well, and they kind of had a big airing out session. And since then they've been pretty much dominant in world cricket, and we saw that in the T20 World Cup. And I think that they will come to the Ashes as favourites.
Yeah, I think most people would. I mean, we talked recently. Well, I've had a lot of other people talk recently about the greater depth as well in the Australian women's professional setup. I mean, they've got something like 120 professional players to England's about 20-25. Is it in the England squad?
Yeah, I think it's still either low 20s or high.
Yeah. So obviously that's significant, I guess. And we've touched on obviously the Sri Lanka tour, and Amy Jones had a brilliant run of games in Sri Lanka. She had, 2-3 half centuries, and as part of that helped England put in some record scores in Sri Lanka. Obviously she'd kind of maybe got stuck in the pecking order behind Sarah Taylor previously.
I think that could change. I think it should change, actually. Sarah Taylor looked really ordinary with the bat. She kept very well. She's a very good keeper. She's sort of innately, I think she'll never lose that. She can sort of rely on her just ridiculous skill that will, she shouldn't have to do anything, I don't think. Batting wise, she looked out of sorts. She was playing across the line. She never looked confident. She wasn't timing it at all, and she got 3 low scores and didn't really contribute at all with the bat. I think there will come a point quite soon, especially overseas, where we might well have seen the last of Sarah Taylor overseas, and I wouldn't be surprised if Sarah Taylor's England career isn't that much longer either. And I'm not saying this with any sort of sense of glee or anything. I mean, she's somebody who's only 28, 29. You want to see her play for England for a very long time to come, because she is a phenomenal talent, and when she applies herself and when she's going through a run, she's great to see her bat and gloves. But I think that there are some deeper underlying issues, and she is not performing to the standards that England need her to. And it's a ruthless world, professional cricket. and I think that Amy Jones, if not already, very soon, will be making a case to be the number 1 pick keeper.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, Sarah Taylor, 2, a 1 and a 10 in the 3 ODIs against India, and didn't play in the 2020s or in Sri Lanka, obviously. But even dating back to before then, the warm-up game, she only got 2. Their last couple of innings, the Surrey Stars, 5, 15, 1. She had a 38 against the Vipers, but that was in mid-August at Hove. So we're going back, to last year for any kind of significant, should we call it, contribution with the bat, and she did have a half century at Manchester against the Thunder at the start of August. But it's a strange one because obviously she's such a well-known player, pretty much one of the household names of the England women's cricket team. But as you say, at some point, if performances aren't there and someone else is knocking on the door as hard as Amy Jones is now after what she's done this winter, this ties back into what you're saying about tough decisions and tough love is necessary, perhaps, for the England women's team to take that next step.
Yeah, I think so. And I think we've already seen a few sort of tough decisions being made by Mark Robinson and his coaching staff in terminating the contracts of Tash Farrant and Beth Langston. And the difficulty is, of course, is that unlike the men, there's no kind of safety net they fall back into. The Kia Super League certainly isn't anywhere near enough to live on. I think it's sort of like a 10% professional kind of thing. So, when you do terminate an England contract, that's it. You're unemployed. And I think that, I think he will make a few more decisions. But having said that, also it's nice to see the careers revived of a couple of others that perhaps you'd have thought a few years ago would be on the scrap heap, like Amy Jones, like Kate Cross, for example, as well.
Yeah, you mentioned Kate Cross. Of course, she put in that fantastic effort in the third T20 against India. England won by 1 run. Kate Cross did just 1 run off the final over. I think she took 2 wickets as well. And there seems to have been 1 or 2, as you say, people put their hand up. Jones, we've mentioned. Cross is another one she played in the WBBL and seems to have really grown as a cricketer. I mean, I don't know the England women's side as well as you do, and sort of only infrequently, if I get my words out properly, I've seen Kate play, but she just seems to have grown so much as a player, and obviously to hold a nerve in that way in that T20 was huge.
I think she's a tremendously skillful bowler. I think she's also been through a fair share of ups and downs off the pitch as well. I think that she's sort of one of the only reason that she's stayed around that England setup is because England still do play Test cricket, and therefore she's sort of because she's a very skillful red ball bowler. Yeah. It's taken a little while to transfer that over to the white ball stuff, but because she's had that time too, she now is coming in to her own as a white ball bowler, and I think that she's probably the greatest argument to keep red ball Test cricket in the women's game, because otherwise, without that, she would have been discarded years ago. And now I think she could be a huge offering for the team in all formats of the game. And I'm looking forward to it.
Have we seen maybe a new, this again touches on Sarah Taylor and Amy Jones, are we seeing maybe a new top 3 forming out of this tour? Obviously Danny White got the opportunity to open with Amy Jones, Tammy Beaumont dropping to 3. And as we said, Sri Lanka maybe not the strongest test, but all 3 seem to perform pretty well in those new roles, and perhaps give the England side a different look at the top of the order heading into the summer.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, I think I've said this before. I think Danny White is almost like a Joss Butler type character in that she is so talented and so versatile that you kind of want them to get in and playing all formats, and B, up the order, because otherwise you're not making use of the skill that you've got there. And I actually think that her role in one-day cricket, 50 over stuff, should be at top of the order. I know that England have liked to have Jones and Beaumont there, this nice sort of contrast in styles. But I think she should be at the top of the order. I think whether it's with Beaumont or Jones, I'm not particularly bothered. I think probably Beaumont, all her success has come from right at the top, and then I think Jones is, she's a very elegant classical cricketer. She would be I think she's perfect at the middle order. I think that would be, for me, that's what I would go into the summer leading with.
Do you think there should be maybe a target of some sort of the England women's team heading into this summer? We mentioned the West Indies, who are second from bottom in the ICC Women's Championship at the moment. Australia obviously at the top, and they're 4 points ahead of England, and they've played 3 less games as well. As we mentioned, they are the team right now in women's cricket. But is there a kind of a target, do you think, for England to try and measure themselves against, maybe whether it be against Australia or just in a broader sense over the summer?
I think anything but a whitewash in the one day will be a disappointment. I think West Indies really are a much less entity in one-day cricket than they are in T20 cricket. I think a win in the T20 series would be seen as a success. I mean, I would imagine West Indies really challenging in that series. And then the Ashes, I think it's very simple. I think they need want to win them, of course. And I think, and it's just ridiculous. You don't want to ever aim for like a narrow loss, but a narrow loss is not going to be a disaster.
Yeah.
Against a very strong Australian outfit. I don't know whether measure is the right word. I think I think Ashes is the big one, but I think if they lose them, it won't be a surprise. And then they'll look ahead to the T20 World Cup, which again is coming round next year in Australia. I think women's cricket is getting to the stage where it's the merry roundabout that is the men's game as well now.
We mentioned that the need for, or the place for women's Test cricket. So, I mean, when we talked about Kate Cross, but just in broader terms, where do you see that going? Are we going to see an expansion of the number of Tests international women's teams that are playing, or is it still going to stay as something of a, I don't want to call it niche because that's maybe unfair and the wrong word to use, but something we don't see as often as perhaps we would like, but maybe the schedule allows for?
I don't understand why more bilateral series between women's teams aren't played like the Ashes, where you've got the multi-point system. It just seems like the most common sense and easiest way to retain Test cricket and meaningful Test cricket, where you play 3 one-dayers, 3 T20s, and 1 Test match. And I think it's 2 points for a win in the 1 day in T20s. And 4 points for a win in Test match. It's so obvious. I don't understand why it's not done. But that's nothing to do with ECB or anything. That's the ICC, really.
Sure. Yeah. No. That makes. I'm sorry. I obviously understand it's a top level decision, but kind of you said, why wouldn't people want that? Because you said it surely it makes sense, and we've seen today with Bangalore and their mixed gender T20 game they're talking about. And
yes.
So is it that certain boards maybe are hesitant to introduce women's tests when the series are in their backyard or in being hosted in their country, or what is the hold-up? Why don't we see this kind of multi-format system introduced more broadly?
I think there's probably a little bit of sort of hesitation about standards, and this is kind of the constant difficulty or challenge facing women's sport, is that there's always going to be a question in sports that have been professional in the men's side for a number of years. When the women start becoming professional, is do you invest first when the standard might not be quite what you expect, as in, do you get the media coverage, do you get them paid to a good level when actually their talent, the standard doesn't necessarily warrant it? Or what has happened in the past is, do you try and get the standard up first and then start investing? Like, I think that second option has been proven not to work.
Yeah.
But the first option will then bring that backlash of, they're not good enough to be professionals, and a lot of difficulty trying to get traction in terms of that media market, which is at the end of the day, it's what makes the world go round.
Yeah.
And sport leverages off that. So, and it will take a longer period of time than most assets that people invest in want to make a return from. So I think that the difficulty of Test cricket is that the standard for a lot of most women teams, especially those that haven't played Test cricket kind of ever, think about New Zealand, and Susie Bates, who's probably one of the best cricketers in the world, has been for the last 10 years, has never played a Test match for New Zealand. They will, because they've not played, they will not be good, like the great Test cricketers from day one, because they've never had a need to bat for 4 days, bat for a day, let's say. That's never been what they've had to train for, because why would you train for something you're never going to play, right?
Right.
So the quality is not going to be what you want it to be from the off. It's going to take a decade perhaps to get to good, interesting, or consistently good and interesting women's Test matches. So I think this is probably what is delaying it. And ironically, of course, the more you delay it, the longer it's going to take.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't think we're seeing as many Test matches between other nations.
Yeah. Which seems a huge shame. The way, something like New Zealand, you mentioned a perfect example, the way they have developed, should we call it, as a team. They are genuine world beaters. They'll be in the mix to win the 2020 World Cup next year. But
it just goes back to that short-term investment over long-term investment. And I think because of the growth of the women's game through T20 and one-day cricket, it will get to a stage where the ICC and other governing bodies will have to invest in Test cricket, because it will just become farcical. But I just, unfortunately, don't think we're at that stage yet.
Are we, or what? Sorry, let me read that. obviously with who is it who was at Worcestershire who was released? Lauren.
Oh no, I've forgotten her name. Rouse,
who was released by Worcestershire, and now
yeah.
that was not. I mean, I'll hold my hands up. My own knowledge of the women's domestic game in England is limited. I'll freely admit that it should probably be better, and it was an eye opener for me partly because it was Worcestershire, who I would always think of as a first class county, and that would always be my association. But it's kind of like, it's she didn't pay her subs. It's like, excuse me, hang on, wait. It's like no, if I don't pay my subs, it's like if I don't pay my subs, that's one thing. I just play local club cricket. It's and this is like this, and from there, of course, it all mushroomed into, well, actually, this is not atypical for a lot of women's cricketers in the UK right now.
Yeah,
the success of the England team combined with these kind of stories coming out and going, look, this is how it is on the ground. Are we actually going to see a groundswell of support or movement to try and change that domestically in the near future? Do you think?
I think there's two important elements to that. I think the first is, as you say, part of the issues facing women's cricket in England is that people just don't know. And people don't know because there's not that initial interest. So it's not going to be covered by major papers, for example. And it was almost got to a point, at least when I was playing county cricket, where it was just like, I've been saying this for so long that I'm just tired. Done. I'm not going to say it anymore. Or also, there's also on the flip side. I remember when I was playing at Middlesex, and I'm more happy to kind of mouth off left, right, and centre now that I'm no longer. But there is that loyalty to your club and Middlesex. I was born in Hammersmith. I live in sort of Middlesex's jurisdiction still. My grandparents live essentially literally across the road from Lords. It's always been my club. Mike Brearley was pretty much my hero from way younger than he should have been. And when just playing for Middlesex was a massive kind of exciting factor. You didn't want to start sort of saying, well, we're being actually treated really poorly. And I did get to a stage where I did just sort of say all these things. And I'm sure I'm in a number of people's bad books. But there is that element of, and this is again another difficulty with women's cricket, is that it's that combination of sort of softly we're making huge strides, things are getting better, and let's bang the door down because this is absolutely not okay. And I think that probably is part of the reason why it hasn't quite been, some of the stories that people are starting to hear haven't been out before. I mean, I remember in 2015, I think, in the Women's Ashes on BBC, I was on air with Charles Dagnall, who of course has played huge amounts of county cricket over the decades. And I was at that point, I think I was captain of Middlesex at that point, and I was saying that one of the things we were trying to change at Middlesex is that we didn't get regular training sessions during the summer because we were all working or at university or whatever. So we couldn't train until after working hours, right? But after working hours is the prime time for corporate hire of all the nets, etc. So therefore, that took precedence. So we couldn't train until 9 o'clock at night in North Finchley, which for someone like me who worked in East London and lives in Hammersmith was not really okay. And so we were getting 2 hours on a Tuesday night, but we couldn't have a coach because they didn't have the funds to pay him. And now and again, there'd be a sort of a training session, coach development session that was taking over the hall, so we couldn't use it. I mean, it was, so basically we weren't training, and that was changing. And Charles, literally on air, was just like, he asked me about 3 times that, are you sure this is the case? I was like, yes, I'm pretty sure.
I was there.
He just had no idea. And Charles is one of the biggest supporters of women's cricket and analyses it like I think we all should do. And he views it as cricket, just cricket. And and that is the second element. So that's the first element. People just don't know. I think the other second element is that the structure of women's county cricket is so obscure that somewhere like Worcestershire, which is a men's first class county, is not necessarily the equivalent in women's cricket. Worcestershire, in the county 50 over staff, just won Division 3C, I'm not sure. Anyway, there's 2 there's Division 1 and Division 2 have 8 teams each, in which almost all of the England players play in Division 1. A couple play in Division 2, but only really the ones that have their place in the team secure. Like if you're on the fringes, you're actively told to go and play in Division 1, so you're playing high enough quality of cricket. Like Fran Wilson, for example, was at Middlesex. Middlesex got relegated this year in the 50 over staff, and she's on the fringes of England, so she's been told potentially to move. So she's moved to Kent over the winter, which is pretty brutal, really. But it also means, therefore, that you've got quite a relatively strong first division. Second division's not that far behind, but then you've got 5 lots of Division 3 split with 4 teams in them each, split across the country geographically. So you've got to get my maths right. You've got 16 and then 20. Yeah. So you've got 36 counties essentially playing cricket at what is perceived to be women's county cricket level. Now, you know what the pool's like in women's domestic cricket. There are not 36 really good women's counties.
Yeah.
When you're getting down to the bottom of Division 3s, there's still a long way to go in development on the pitch. So I think Worcestershire, for example, they're a prime example. They actually won, I think they're getting promoted in Division 2, but they're not really an equivalent first-class county in women's cricket. So you'd almost class them as a minor county in women's cricket. And whether that's Worcestershire's own fault or otherwise, then you start to think, well, okay, in a minor county, what's the position like for the men there? I don't know. Do they pay subs? They get paid anything in expenses? I don't actually know. But you've got to be careful in a way of sort of equating the Worcestershire to a first-class county. Yeah. But equally, I think that not being able to play for your county because you can't play your subs is pretty shoddy.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I think minor counties maybe get expenses and sort of...
And the fact that, I think all county cricket should have that.
Yeah. I mean, I should probably know because the Cambridgeshire captain plays for the same club as me. But I think,
it's something I should probably find out as well. But
the point kind of stands if the minor counties men's teams are in a healthy enough position to at least compensate expenses. I think Cassie Coombs at Somerset did quite a long... Yeah, well, she did as a post. It was obviously the old-fashioned iPhone notes thing. And just some of the stuff on there, like not having up-to-date headshots for the website, and it's like that's
absolutely
like that's
that
doesn't even cost money.
Middlesex, that's just that's also sort of. I'll come on to that in a second. Middlesex. So I played at Middlesex obviously for a number of years, and they still in 2019 are not getting paid travel expenses. You've got an away match at Yorkshire and Lancashire. That's a 400 and something round mile trip. Like it's just absurd.
And that's probably a stay over as well for that kind of trip. Either you're staying the night before, so
so they would pay for a hotel,
right?
But they wouldn't pay for travel expenses. But they will sign AB de Villiers, and we talked earlier in the IPL about. I wonder what he's getting paid.
Yeah.
But, going to the sort of stuff that needs to be done for women's cricket that doesn't cost money and would make huge strides. It is so frustrating, but a lot of it is to do with infrastructure. So because women's cricket has only really developed to this stage of the last, decade, a lot of the roles in these professional counties won't have, like if you look at the job descriptions of, say, the communications manager for a first-class county, when they got hired, let's say they got hired, 6-7 years ago, their remit would have been, right, you need to tweet about the men's team doing this, you need to put out press releases. They'll have had a remit, and nowhere in that remit will it have said anything about women's cricket.
Yeah.
But now, their role really should include that. But then... And what needs to happen, of course, is that someone needs to be hired. But there is this kind of lag in infrastructure. I think that the intent is there. I genuinely think that in the management of sport as a whole, there is a lot of goodwill towards women's sport. There's just acknowledgement that it has been repressed. There's been so much discrimination. And I think we're in a much more enlightened society than we are, thank goodness. But it's all very well having sort of goodwill and good intent, but a communications manager is not going to be wanting to do two jobs essentially for the time and the pay that they may have for their one job. And so everything they're almost doing now is just goodwill. Yeah. So we were very lucky at Middlesex, where our communications manager essentially did agree to started covering a lot of the women's staff, but he was kind of doing that as an extra. Now, of course, you want to get, say, a women's communication manager, or at least maybe two people doing the job, split across them both. That even better, to be honest, because I don't think you should discriminate between the two of them. But that then involves money and people, and well, we all know the state of county cricket and money nowadays. That's where, on the face of it, yes, it looks very easy and simple to do. I think, and you sort of dig down, actually, a lot of it comes down to the manpower and the infrastructure.
Yeah. I think Sam Morse said at the Cricketer, following their piece on Laura Rolls, he or somebody at the Cricketer looked at the various first-class counties' Twitter feeds between two certain dates. I think around this time last year, or around the time of the KSL maybe last year, just to see how many times the either the women's team or women's players from within the wider club were mentioned. I think some of them mentioned it maybe once or twice. Others were better, shall we say, for quote unquote. Yeah. And some just either was no mention or barely a mention. But obviously, there's always time to mention the Kia Sedona they've got from so-and-so dealership for the overseas player. And as you say, that it always looks bad when there's this huge disjointed point. And my little girl's, she's only 7 now. We play a bit in the backyard. She's doing the all-star cricket. She may never want to do anything other than play in the backyard or on the beach or at the park. But, I would like to think there is a structure there for her if she ever wants to take it further and play club or maybe try and play professionally. And I'm much more conscious of that as a result. And as I say, the news story with that broke a couple of weeks ago with Lauren Rouse and everything that's mushroomed from there has been eye-opening, to say the least. Yeah, and I think
this will generally, it's just a matter of time. And I do think that it is going in the right direction. There are some instances where I want to bang my head on the table and sort of think, why? And it's good that people are realising that there are issues. These things weren't talked about just a year ago. So I think, shambolic in many ways, but also how good is it that people are starting to discuss these things and point them out? There's a lot of potential here. And even just think about like a young journalist trying to sort of get a novel angle to something or find out a bit of information that nobody else knows. Well, go and dig into women's cricket, because actually there's a whole load of stories there. So I think I'm pretty optimistic. I've been there. I know what it's like, and I think that change is coming. In a way, what an exciting time to be involved, because it's there's so much to look forward to.
Yeah, and as you say, there's so much opportunity there as well. I mean, it's surely for any sport, I guess it's the single biggest potential growth area, really, still.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Both financially and sort of in terms of goodwill as well. I mean, brands are starting to clock, and I mean, it's been so obvious for so many years that like if you start supporting women's cricket and sort of gender equality, actually, it's quite a good look. And any sort of other issues that you may have sort of behind the scenes or financially, this could take centre stage. I mean, RCB, a prime example, in releasing their sort of hashtag challenge accepted and playing this T20 game with men and women included. I mean, it's not a novel idea. It's happened before. In Australia, I think it was Zoe Goss bowling out Brian Lara. B, I'm not actually sure what anyone's going to get out of it in terms of like, women and men probably aren't ever going to play professionally together. They're quite distinct styles, quite distinct games, and there's well-known cricketers, women cricketers being involved that were already well-known cricketers and being involved. Like one of the issues is that you've kind of got a hierarchy in women's cricket of like superstars and then players that people just don't know. So I'm not 100% sure what women's cricket is going to get from this game. But I do know that it looks really good for RCB.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It makes them look awesome.
Yeah.
Brownie points.
Yeah, but as you say, the goodwill factor is, a factor. I don't know how else to put it. And I do find it so strange that just with the change from the KSL finally starting to get legs and that kind of having the rug pulled out from under it, and it's now going to have a women's version of the 100. I guess we call it the women's 100 for lack of, because we don't know anything about the flipping 100. It just all these sort of strange ways of handling what could be such a positive area of the sport in the UK and obviously, globally as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Izzy,
which is bright.
Yeah.
A well-known mobile phone company one.
Yeah. Izzy, thank you very much for joining me on this episode and of course the IPL one we recorded earlier this evening as well. That would have been released whenever I released it. Again, in the editing booth magic, as I like to call it, to have the double episode with you to get your thoughts on both the IPL and the England women's cricket team and women's cricket in general. Obviously, you got your new role with the Telegraph starting. I guess you're already started, but with the county season, where can people find you other than that?
I guess on Twitter, just at Izzy Westbury. I kind of just a shameless journalist. I sort of tweet my pieces and everything that I'm doing.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for taking the time to join me.
It's a pleasure. Thanks very much.